Hello, dear tea friends from around the world. Welcome not to a tea class, but to an interview with one of my tea friends and also customer, fellow tea drinker, Oded Tzur. He's live in New York City. Let me introduce him first before we start the interview. Oded Tzur is an Israeli, New York City-based saxophonist, composer, band leader, and also educator. His music explores the connections of Indian classical music and jazz. His sound on the tenor saxophone is unique in the world. And for me, actually, he has reinvented the way the saxophone sounds, and he has given it much more range and depth. And when I listen to his music, for me, it's like listening to a voice, almost a human voice, half singing, half whispering, and telling a very fabulous, very strange story. And when you listen to it, for me, it's almost hypnotizing, the same way as you would imagine an Indian snake magician now is playing with his flute, and the snake is moving and the dancing at the same time. I have this kind of feeling when I listen to his music. You get absorbed by his music, and it's really a great way to also to enjoy tea, and because you are really entering a world with him like you would enter tea, and since it's two different senses, you can really play with them, and they complement each other. Oded has already published 4 albums, 3 of which I have at home. The first one was Like a Great River. Here you have it. Then came Translator's Note, and here we have Here Be Dragons, maybe my favorite. And this one you still can purchase it on my website, but we're not here to promote the CDs on my website. You can listen also on all kinds of apps, on Spotify, iTunes, I guess. And Oded is also very often in concert, and if there's a concert with him and his band, I really recommend that you go and check him out. It must be really wonderful in live. I had not the opportunity to listen to him live with his band, only to him personally, but this is already a very great gift. But really, it's even better when you hear him live than when you hear him on headphones or on a hi-fi music player. Did I miss something, Oded?
No, I think you covered pretty much everything. Thank you very much for having me, and thank you for your kind words. I appreciate it.
Okay, actually, more half of it I got from Wikipedia. I did look this up, and I made the rest were my words, my adaptation. Yeah. But I want, because people who follow Oded, maybe if they stumble on this interview, I want to add a few more details on his life that are not on Wikipedia. And that I could get through his trusted friendship. So two bits of information about Oded that I find personally very important. As I mentioned, he's of Israeli origin, born I think in Tel Aviv, Yafo, and he did his military service in Israel, like every Israeli, at Galatz, the IDF, the Israeli radio station that is quite popular and that I very often listen to. So I was surprised when he told me that actually he did his military service in this radio station. The second bit of information that you might find interesting about Oded is that probably like I think many Indians, he's vegan. And I had the opportunity to eat with him food that he cooked personally, and I found it so delicious that I continue to cook this at home, and I really thank him very much for teaching me this this particular dish.
Anytime. You're very kind, Stefan.
And the other connection that we have in common is that he's hummus and a tea lover. So I've checked when we first met online. That was already 11 years ago. In August 2011, you wrote me an email to inquire about my teas and some teaware. But I was wondering, when did you start to drink tea, Oded?
It was, I think, a few months before that. I was actually living in the Netherlands at the time, and the circumstances that led to that were a little bit unexpected, because I was actually a coffee lover, having grown up in Israel, and what made me more of a coffee lover actually is that I was living in the Netherlands for 4 years at that time, and the coffee in the Netherlands is absolutely horrendous. So I was missing home even more because of that, and I used to kind of get my coffee from Israel and things like that. And at a certain point, I think it was around the time that the practice of meditation became a bigger part of my life, I started to notice that coffee isn't making me feel as good as I thought that it was. And it was heartbreaking for me to let go of coffee. It reminded me of home and all kinds of things. But I realized that I had to do it, and I was wondering if there's anything that could substitute that sort of habit of, dealing with a beverage that focuses you and helps you and makes you enjoy it, obviously. And I started reading about tea and stuff, and I think that I stumbled upon your blog, and I think it was by far my favorite. It was just the only one that seemed to treat it as an art form that I found at the time, which it is, obviously. And I was able to learn so much from it. And then I thought, okay, let me reach out to this person who's writing this. And luckily, you responded, so it was great for me, because then I got to learn even more. So that's how it kind of started, I guess.
So, what teas have you been drinking at that time? With which teas did you really start to enjoy drinking tea?
So before I started buying tea from you, there was like a shop somewhere in the Netherlands where I was buying whatever they had. And when you don't know so much about tea, then you can try, I don't know, Earl Grey or something like this, and the person in the shop tells you, this is the best Earl Grey there is. And then, my headphones just fell. Can you still hear me?
No, yeah, I can still hear you. I can see.
So I thought, wow, I mean, I'm never going to get over coffee like that, because if this is the best tea there is, then we have a problem. But slowly I got into oolongs, and then I started getting into tiguanyin, and specifically because that's what they had there in the shop. And once you sent me some of your teas, which were also mostly oolongs at the time, Taiwanese oolongs, I got into this world of Taiwanese oolongs, and I was just mind blown, because suddenly it tasted so amazing. And I thought, okay, I think I can become a tea drinker if this is what tea tastes like.
Oh, great. Thank you for sharing this experience with us. I would like to ask you also, what is currently your favorite tea category? Is it still high mountain oolongs?
I think that it is still high mountain oolongs. That's what I drink the most. I also really love Heng Shui oolongs. And I got more and more into pu'ers in the past maybe 5 or 6 years. So I love all of them, honestly. Yeah.
Great. Currently, from the most recent package you received is a favorite tea that is standing out among
having
them?
The Shanlin Chi at the moment from this year that I really love. That's what I'm having right now, actually, and it's just so powerful, like so potent and intense. I really love it. I love all of them, though, and I love the Hung Shui that you sent me as well in the last shipment. It's also amazing.
Great. So did you build a routine during your day that when you are, a special moment when you are drinking tea?
It's pretty much the whole day. It starts in the morning. I don't drink it when I'm asleep. I think that's the only time.
Okay, good excuse, good excuse.
It starts in the morning, and then I have some more afterwards. I try to not have it after 6 p.m. But until that time, I have it pretty much all the time. And it's still a ceremony, so even though it happens pretty much the whole day, it is definitely something that I feel centers me around this practice, and then takes me to the other types of practice that I do, which have to do with music. But there's sort of a relationship between those things for me.
Well, for me, the relationship that I can feel, the one that I can between your music and tea, is the way you are playing is a very lingering way. And for me, this lingering is also one of the most the nicest pleasure I have in tea is when the taste is not just something that you have for a few seconds, but this is something that stays on and on and on and on. When you have this lingering taste in your mouth, for me, this is the biggest similarity with your music. Would you? Do you feel the same, or is it intentional? Or
I feel exactly the same, and I think that's the case with all good things, really. If you meet a person that is very special, you might feel the impact of that encounter a long time after the encounter is over, and maybe you wouldn't even feel something so spectacular at that moment, but what lingers on is the part that's important. And I think that it's the same with music. Music that kind of stuns me and takes off right away is rarely music that I find memorable and that stays with me and changes me afterwards. So I find that to be just like what you described about tea. So since you're drinking tea the whole day, can we say that we say many artists, they are under the influence of some drugs when they compose, when they make music, but so you are definitely then under the influence of tea. Absolutely. While you are making music. No question. There's no question. And I'm actually busy composing my next album now. And there's no doubt that, tea is there just all the time. And this album also has to do with meditating on a person and thinking about the qualities of that person. Excuse me. And that's also related to what we're talking about, because when you get to know a person, that person gets imbued in you, in your thoughts and in your feelings. And you become someone else, and hopefully someone better. So, there's no leaves in the water anymore. The leaves are not there. But the water remembers something from the leaves, and as we drink it, and we remember something from the leaves as well. And I think about these things a lot, especially when I'm composing.
Because I also realized that your first album, Like a River, and who speaks of river speaks of water. There's no water. There's no river without water, and water is the mother of tea. You cannot make tea without water. And the second hint to tea that I found in your album names is, of course, Here Be Dragons, because oolong is the dark dragon, and your cover is very dark. It's very black, so it really feels like there's a black dragon somewhere, if we can find it. So it's like, for me, it was also about maybe about oolong. And when I drink and when I listen to it, it's like really this. I can feel this lingering tone, and drinking tea where you just make one brew, start 2 brews, 3 brews, and it goes on and on because you have this nice feeling that you don't want to stop it. And your music also feels like this. It's not music that is made like a hit song for radio. It has to be 3 minutes 30 and stop very quickly. Yours can last for minutes, and it does not have a definite number of seconds on the album. Some are very short, but most actually are quite long.
Thank you very much.
So very, I do feel that tea is in your music. And I wonder, how do you do when you're on tour?
It's very hard.
Because
I mean, the number of unpleasant encounters that I had with hotel staff that didn't understand why I want a kettle and stuff like that. It's pretty rough. I figured out a few solutions that helped me here and there, but
can you share a few?
Sometimes, I mean, it really depends on where you are. In France and Germany, I found that it is a little bit more common to have a kettle in the room in the hotel. And then if that's the case, I make some tea when I'm there and I put it in my thermos. And sometimes I take one of my teapots and make it this way, but sometimes I can't even do that. Sometimes I use cold brew and I just put the leaves in room temperature water. The advantage of that obviously is that you're not spoiling the taste of the tea with any extra ingredients. On the other hand, sometimes it's cold and you want to have hot tea. So I haven't figured out the perfect solution yet, but I'm working on
it. So when I'm traveling, and I've shared this trick a few times on my blog, is that I'm using a thermos and with very few leaves, but usually with not high mountain oolong. High mountain oolong is too fragile and it will oxidize with time. But either a Hong Shui, older Hong Shui, or even a Shou Pu'er or an aged Pu'er are good. And then the leaves stay in the thermos all the time. That's why we don't need so much, because you are just going to drink one brew, and even after five hours, it's still okay. And I can even use it on the airplane after the security check, then fill the thermos with boiling water from a cafe. Of course, it's easier in Asia where there are fountains with boiling water. But I remember at JFK there are some coffee shops where you can get hot water. They charge $1, but
it's worth it.
$1 well spent if you're able to have a large thermos full of good tea, maybe for the checking in or when you are seated. So a few tricks for you and maybe people who are listening. I remember, when checking for this interview, I looked at our very first emails, and in these emails we were discussing also about the art of tea and the art of music, and because for many people who are learning music or learning tea, there are lots of constraints, and there's one sentence that you then wrote me. You wrote, freedom is within the discipline.
Yeah.
And I was really struck by how true these words are, because the more you master the rules and how the traditions of how tea or music is supposed to be made, the more you become free in innovation in creation also. But still there's a frame that you try to respect, and very often it's if something becomes off, it's because you did not respect it well, and so it's really a great help.
That is a famous quote that people use in Indian classical music, actually. So in my studies of that tradition, I was told that many times, and I find it to also, just like you said, be a spectacular piece of advice, but also a testament to the reality of any art form, for me at least. When I was younger, I think that I thought of freedom in the art as something that is the absence of rules, the absence of limitations. And I took that as far as I was able to. I remember, going to the outdoors when I was younger and trying to play the saxophone in all kinds of strange environments. I was really big on adventure when I was a teenager. And I would go into all kinds of abandoned buildings that I could find, or like places in nature. I wanted to experience what it's like to really have no rules and to have no context for what I'm playing. That also has to do with the fact that I was always curious about cultural context, and if there is any type of music that rises above context, if there is anything like that at all, or is any art form embedded in a way that cannot be changed in the culture that it originated from, and so on, other questions that I had. But all of that to say that this process took me to a certain place where I felt like, even the complete absence of rules doesn't really feel like what I thought freedom should feel like. I wasn't sure what it should feel like, but I didn't find it there. And I sort of took a turn, and I went back into civilized society, and I went back to practicing jazz music at the time, which is what I was playing. And when I found out about Indian classical music, I think that's one of the reasons why it hit me so much. Because in Indian classical music, you have this practice that has no regard for, taking away the rules. The rules are sacred. The rules are like, no one is like, oh, I'm going to be original and change the rules. That's just not how it is at all. Like, the rules are very, very kind of stable. But exactly because of that, they sort of, they act like the spiral, like hot air that takes you up. If the hot air wasn't, like if the hot air just went sideways and went everywhere that it wanted to go, it wouldn't take you upwards. It wouldn't have that elevating force. That's sort of what I'm thinking about when I'm thinking about it. And I learned that the absence of rules doesn't equal freedom. And it was a big lesson for me. So I completely agree.
But in jazz, is it also the same as in this Indian classical music, that there are, because when people improvise in jazz, they're not doing just anything. There's still a
I think it is the same more or less in every art form. But when I was younger, I was interested particularly in this genre or subgenre called free jazz, which has to do with this movement that started in the 60s, where people said, we don't want to improvise over the harmonic structure of the song. We feel like this is impeding our creativity, and we want to create something that is different. Now, they also didn't necessarily mean what I meant when I was a teenager. I was just kind of busy growing up. So to an extent, it's similar, but in another way, in Indian classical music, these things are very, very pronounced. And the fact that you have to respect the personality of the raga is like the melody that you are playing, and that the raga is something that you have to bring to life. Again, it's like a person that you have to make present in this moment. those things are considered sacred, and the whole music making is considered to be a prayer or a form of meditation, which is prayer. And that's why the rules are not, I guess, fought against in the very same way. It's a little bit of a different environment. But for me, when I learned about this music and met my teachers, and I was told, okay, you know, today you're working on this one note. And I was like, okay, and then I played that one note, and my mind automatically went to the next note. And then my teachers would say, no, it's just this one note. That's all. That's all you have. You have nowhere to escape. And I think that that's what my current interpretation of freedom would be, that you're not afraid. Not that you have no rules and no limitations, but that there's no amount of rules and limitations that would make you forget about the truth. And even just one note is enough for you to experience everything that music really has to offer. And when you are in that sort of environment, limitations don't scare you, don't make you feel like they impede your creativity so much.
What you said just about the raga being sacred and that you have to really respect its character, its melody. For me, it reminds me of also what I say for a chashi, this art form of a brewing tea, is that really at the center is the tea itself. What is the character of the tea? What are and to start with the understanding of the tea you are brewing, and then everything else falls into place. Which tea ware you are going to use, what water, how to boil it, which cups, then how long do you want to stress its sense or its aftertaste. This actually everything comes from the tea. The understanding of the tea is really the fundamental thing, and from there are so many things you can elaborate on, but try to go with the flow, by respecting what the tea wants to tell us, because if you go against it, you're not going to make good tea. You're going to ruin the tea. So I can again a great connection between music and tea.
That's very cool.
So maybe we've wrapped this on this high note of the interview. So people have to really watch it till the end. And now what I propose to do is in a second part, we are going to see you perform brewing, and I will try to give you some advice on how to improve it. Okay?
Thank
Great.
you, Stefan.
Thank you.